Hello everybody and welcome back to this buyer's guide for another Cities Skylines DLC, and this is going to be mass transit. This is one that I think gets recommended the most of all of the DLCs, and you know what? After plopping everything down and looking at everything that you get in this DLC, I stand by the fact that this is not the one that I recommend the most. And this one actually really doesn't add that much stuff. It's actually it was actually kind of surprising how little this actually added once I started putting stuff down and looking at what we got going on here. So let's zoom out to DLC Town, as it has been converted into a transit paradise. So this is essentially, you know, if we get the little bit over here in the frame, this is everything you physically get in mass transit expansion for City Skylines. Okay. So let's break it down. The ploppable unique buildings that you get 3 of them this time. That's I think that's less than everything we've looked at thus far. You get the traffic park. Don't get me wrong, these are cool little assets. Every asset is a neat little thing. This is the locomotive halls, a little museum dedicated to train history, which is kind of nice. And we also have a ferry, something that's sort of dedicated to the ferries. This is not operational. This is just the museum, right? And because this is so high up, it looks kind of janky, but this is kind of what you get, a little boat museum, just like the train museum. Those are 3 unique buildings. They work like all the other unique buildings. No additional gameplay there, except for the fact that Sims just love to visit them. The other really cool thing is probably the most awesome thing you actually get in this, especially if you maybe play the game on console, or you know, for whatever reason you don't want to use any mods, is you get some additional roads. You get an asymmetrical 2-way or 2-lane one way and 1 way the other way. So a 3-lane asymmetrical road. Very, very nice to have every once in a while. Of course, it only helps you in certain situations, because sometimes you might want a 2 and a 3, you know, a 5-lane asymmetrical road, or like a 6-lane asymmetrical road or something like that. So, you know, it's better than nothing, but you can get mods that will give you all of this stuff just for free, unfortunately. You know, for the value, you know, unfortunate for the value of the DLC itself, but I'm glad that they added some of this stuff to a DLC, just so some people have it in the base game, and it's absolutely required for console. Some of this stuff is incredibly useful, and not having it in the base game is really goofy. Here is a 2-way freeway or highway, which is really, really cool. So this is freeway speed, but it's sort of like a country road, right? We kind of think a country road type thing going on here. And we have one with barriers, one without. So there's no zoning on these, right? Because they're classified as freeways. So there's no zoning on any of these except for the asymmetrical road here. It's just a normal road. So these are all different kinds of freeways. These are 2-way freeways here. And then here's a 2-lane. Wow, have we needed this? Wow, have we needed this? Here's a 2-lane freeway. And here's one with barriers. And here's a 4-lane freeway. And here's one with barriers. So that's a big thumbs up. But we kind of already had this even before the DLC came out. So it's kind of like, you know, kind of have to take it with a grain of salt if you're playing on PC. Now, the bulk of the content is in the different kinds of mass transit. Now, the sad thing is when you realize that there's only 3 different kinds of mass transit that are added, that are new with the DLC. You have monorail, which look incredible. And you can, of course, in typical monorail fashion, you know, you can build this over roads. So this is a special kind of road that supports the monorail track. It actually sort of puts in the monorail track as you build the road. And then you have a bunch of different kinds of stations. Here's the most elaborate and fancy of them all, because this is a sort of a transportation hub here. We have 2 monorail tracks can come into this. So multiple different platforms there. We have train. 2 train can come into this. And a metro is also buried underneath here as well. So 1 metro, 2 trains, and 2 monorails. This is a huge hub. I mean, this can service the entire city, essentially, between the monorails and the trains. You can get a lot of people, a lot of places that they need to go. This is really, really cool. This is really, really neat. And we've used that before. Here's just, you know, continuing. Note, you know, this is sort of showing off the fact that the monorail can either be on top of a road or detached from the road, right? So detached from road, and then it can sort of hook into the road even for the 2. Here's the 2-lane variant of the hooked into the road. Very nice, very nice. Here is an example of a monorail station that's not on top of the road itself, like that other one was, right? So this is something you get, a very skinny, sort of low-profile one that you can sneak into a few different areas and on different kinds of roads. Whereas these ones over here The first one that we looked at, let's take a quick break there, is actually attached to the actual road. Looks fantastic though. Looks fantastic. The Sims can come down over here, they can come down over here, and it works great. And so going along in order though, and we get to this one here, which is also on top of a road. So this is attached to a road piece. You can't change this road outright. That's fixated like that. This is a bus terminal. So this is for monorail to bus. So just like that bus terminal we looked at for After Dark, we now have all these platforms here. We can have, I think, like 10 different bus lines coming out of this thing, which is way more than you'd probably ever need for a single location, but there you go. And then we also, that's monorail. That's the monorail, right? It holds 180 people, so it's less than train. It moves a little bit slower than train as well. But it's very sleek, right? You can put this inside the city because of the versatility of the actual rails being able to be built on roads, so that's really cool. Then you have the blimps. Here's the blimps here. We have a blimp depot, which looks very fancy. And then you have actually the blimp stops. So the blimp stops are the ones that go from, you know, point A to point B and then C and then back to A, right? So here's a blimp here, taking off. And it's going to come over here and drop down to here. Now the blimps can only hold, I believe, 35 people. In fact, I'm going to double check this so I'm not crazy. 35 people. Yep, 35 people. And the problem with that is you'll get hundreds of people waiting to ride the blimp, and you're waiting for this blimp to go back and forth. Yeah, you can raise the budget, and then you'll just have literally a line, literally just a thick line of blimps, and it looks ridiculous. The problem is, it's just there's not enough capacity on them. You have to, if you use them in a populated area, you think, oh man, how cool would it be if people could blimp from here to here? Yeah, well, the problem is all your Sims are going to get tied up there, and it's just going to be like this big mass of Sims right here. And it's just kind of weird looking, you know, it's just kind of weird. The third one we could talk about, which is actually pretty awesome, and I've only started really utilizing it recently, and it's really, really fun, is the cable cars. Each of these can hold 30 people, okay? But these things can spit out, you know, these can spit out quite a bit. You can see that each one of these could be holding 30 people. You know, these can handle quite a lot of load. Quite a lot of load. But the cool thing about the cable cars are just perfect for going up slopes and things like that. You have the end stops like this. This is like the end terminal. And then you have sort of the ones that are like continue through and go out both ways, right? So this is like a stop along the path, the ultimate path. And then we have another end stop over here. Very cool. The cable cars are super awesome. Not very customizable though. We cannot actually control the path of the cable cars or anything like that. It's just that one contiguous like cable car lining is just automatically filled with vehicles and stuff. So we don't place routes like we do with buses and monorail and blimps. Those are all like you create stops, and cable cars go to the, you know, like, or the vehicles go to those stops and pick up people and then go back and stuff like that. This, it doesn't work like that. It's just intrinsic that there's a stop here, it goes here, it stops, it goes here and stops, it goes back, and you know, so that's just how it works with the cable cars. It's already built, that functionality is built in, it's not customizable. The last thing to look at though is the ferries. So the fourth thing that you get is the ferries. Here's the ferry depot. Again, like the bus depot and like the blimp depot, this just pumps them out. This just pumps out the ferries when you need them. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. Then we have the large ferry stop here, where this ferry can come into here, and this ferry can come into here, and they won't collide with each other. A big issue with the ferries. Only 50 people could fit on these things. So if you're thinking like, I'm going to have Ferry Island, I'm going to have a big city on Ferry Island, and people are going to get there only via ferry, and like this really awesome isolated place that people have to take the ferry, or they have to take the cable car, or they have to take the blimp, or all three. Yeah, you're going to have a big issue, because you can only get 50 people on a ferry, and these things go so slow. I use a mod to actually up the capacity of this, because most ferries in real life can hold hundreds of people, so even thousands of people sometimes, including vehicles and such. Like, ferries are pretty efficient for certain locations in the world for transportation, and these ferries are anything but. So we have just the single stop ferry stop. Again, you're going to have the jankiness and all the pier buildings, right, of being super, super high up. The Sims are actually going to float down to the ferries and float up to get dropped off and such, which is kind of silly, but, you know, that's just how it goes. Some other little, here's another ferry stop. This is another one. This is connected, so this is ferry and bus. Same concept as the bus stop, right? Same concept as the monorail to bus. Lots of platforms here that you'll never ever use, but it's nice to have it all built in. Nice to have it all built in. This does also have two ferry stops. It has one here and one here. kind of like this, just not designed as like in a way that makes sense. This is a little bit just more freeform. One will come and stop here, one could go here. We could actually have, we could create a ferry that goes from here, wraps all the way around wide and comes into here, and that would actually kind of make, that would create the full loop, right, between all three of these stops. Sort of triangle effect there. We do get additional canals, so we can build these canals and we can build bridges over them. So these are actually really, really cool potential for city design. I'm not very good at knowing when to use these, but you can do some really, really creative stuff with the canals. And ferries can actually go up into the canals, which is super cool. So that was really awesome. The ferries can actually use these canals, actually make stops and stuff within the canals and stuff like that. If you set it like that, if you actually sort of, you know, draw the, you know, create the route that will go through the canal, it actually works pretty well, which is really cool. The last thing, the last ploppable, the only ploppable we haven't talked about yet is the train. So the train station, of course, trains are in the base game, but here we get these ginormous stations. And don't get me wrong, these look incredible. These look incredible, but I don't know when you're ever going to have a city that can actually utilize each of these platforms, because you got to remember, every platform, like these are double railed, see? These are double railed. Every side of every platform is actually a potential train that could come into this. This is an end terminal, and this is the non-end terminal, right? Kind of like thinking of the cable cars, right? The end cable car, the medium, middle cable car, the stop. So this is like the train terminal, and this is like the train stop. So these massive things, but you'd never ever have, think about this though, you'd never have, you know, 12 things and they'd all go to here. No, they'd go to somewhere, some other smaller stop. They like, you'd only have one of these, I feel like. And then it would sort of just web out, right? Like a spider web or something. It would go through the city. But, so these are all the ploppables you get. Not much, guys. It's because here's the thing. Monorail is cool, but it's essentially just train, right? These are too big to even really be practical in most people's cities, but they do look amazing. I mean, all this stuff looks amazing. The blimps are impractical, inefficient. The ferries are rather inefficient. It's kind of disappointing, but that's the truth. The cable cars are fun. But again, I mean, is this really changing the course of the game? No, it's just giving you more flavor, right? Again, more flavor. But honestly, here we're kind of getting, there's kind of a definitive lack of stuff. You know what I mean? When I look at this, especially the unique buildings. I mean, only 3? All the others had like 10 to 15 additional ploppables, plus zoning assets and all kinds of things. So this is very, this feels kind of bare bones, guys. This is looking kind of like a sickly little area, to be honest. I think some of the stuff that they added for the other DLCs could have fit in here, like the international airport kind of could have fit in here. The bus station could have fit in here, but they already did that stuff for After Dark, so I don't know. That's kind of what we got. So what kind of, well, let's look at the policies. Only 3 new policies this time. Higher ticket prices. So if you want people to use the public transit less, then you could use the higher ticket prices. And presumably you might make a little bit more money, but yet people are going to be less likely to use it. So it's hard to, this could work if you have public transit that's getting overused, maybe. Maybe this could help in situations where the blimps are getting overused by like maybe 25 to 50%. You could use this to make a little bit more money off the people you can service. And then you don't have to worry about hundreds of people getting backed up. You can make educational blimps. So this just makes it so that the blimps have educational things instead of regular ads. And I guess it actually boosts the education, a slight education boost, no cost, which is kind of cool. And then prefer ferries. So increase the upkeep of ferries by a small amount, and you encourage the Sims to use the ferries when moving about the city, which is really, really fun. I love hitting that. If I have ferries, I love hitting that because I love seeing as many people using the ferries as possible. However, again, this can create issues because there's only 50 capacity on these ferries. But those are the only 3 policies that we get with mass transit. All right, guys, so let's take a look. You also do get 3 scenarios, and you also get 3 maps. So let's go take a look at the maps that are offered with this DLC and do a little bit of a map tour, and then we'll wrap up this this buyer's guide for mass transit. All right, let's quickly look at the scenarios that are available with mass transit. We have Fix the Traffic, Ferry Empire, and Trains. So feel free to pause at any of these if you want to read the details about them. For the most part, again, I don't particularly do much with the scenarios, but I have actually played Fix the Traffic, and wow, was the traffic in this one absolutely awful. All right, so this is the first map for mass transit called Regal Hills. It has all of the connections. It has some interesting, very skinny little rivers. That's kind of, I think, what's interesting about it. Pretty highly detailed, actually. I mean, they put some rocks here. Like, the developers, I feel like, actually, like, kind of gave this one, you know, some springs up in the hills here. There's a little bit of extra detailing that I'm noting here. But for the most part, it's kind of, I mean, I'm kind of just getting bog standard vibes, you know what I mean? There's definitely a good amount of hills. It's not Prussian Peaks, but there's a good amount of hills here. Some little details. It looks nice. It looks nice to me, you know? It's a good looking map. It looks very natural, you know what I mean? These aren't, a lot of their maps tend to have, especially thus far, right, up until this mass transit, looked very sort of gamey, right? It looked like you were playing SimCity or playing Cities Skylines. Now this is looking a little bit more natural, a little bit more sort of the kind of quality you would expect maybe on the workshop. Not quite as over the top as some of the workshop, you know, most of the workshop maps, but still feels base game, but still feels like it, but feels like it's gone a little bit more natural. So that was Regal Hills, and here we have map number 2 for mass transit. And this is Seven Lakes. And this one, this was the second city we ever made on Twitch. Used this map. This one's kind of a fun one. It does have a boat connection. Just literally right here can connect to boats, which is kind of cool. It has rail. This is essentially the playable area that you get without, you know, expanding that beyond. So the fact that the edges are very kind of like just woodsy and generic hills, and there's no real like anything to sort of get inspired by is kind of intentional, I think, because really you're supposed to be playing around these 7 lakes. It is kind of like set up as to be kind of a valley, to be snuggled in this little valley area. And this map is just kind of fun because, I mean, heck, you have this little island here that you can play around in, some little bits and bobs that you can either remove or get rid of. You start literally right here. You can sort of, you know, make a little road, sort of a little land bridge here to come over to this area. This is what we did in art. We sort of developed here, and then we came over here. We sort of wrapped around this lake area here is what we did, but you can, you know, you could attack it any way you want. The third and final map that we have for Mass Transit DLC is Arid Plains, and this one is, it's kind of funny that I was complimenting the other ones for looking natural, having some really good detailing, because this one is just, I mean, okay, they tried over here, it looks like. They tried over here, but I mean, this river looks, I wouldn't call it natural. It just looks kind of silly. These like plateaus and plains and spotted bits for the fertilized ground. I mean, like this looks kind of, don't get me wrong, I could actually see this being rather good for someone who maybe builds a lot of grid. This is going to definitely force you to build an interesting grid, or maybe no grid at all. So if you're trying to do less grid, this could be an interesting map. But I mean, I don't know, this is just looking very amateurish to me. It's like, oh, we should put a hill here, and it's just like, let's just put a big mound of dirt. Like, there's none of that texturing going on, right? That we saw, none of that texturing that we saw in the other city, right? In Seven Lakes, or even in the first map that we looked at, which was called Regal Hills. This is just, yeah. Arid Plains, this is kind of a no-go. This is kind of a no-go in my mind. I mean, this is kind of interesting. It's interesting that the rail actually just kind of dead ends here, comes in and dead ends there, but I don't know. I don't know. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching this sort of buyer's guide overview of everything that you get in mass transit, so you can make a decision on whether or not this is worth it for you. At this point, you can get it on sale pretty regularly, but it doesn't add that much stuff. I wouldn't say that the maps are really that noteworthy, especially even Natural Disasters had better maps, I think. The amount of ploppables you get seems to be at an all-time low. I think you actually get less content in this one than any other in terms of content for content. You get those extra transportation options, right? And those are really cool because they're alive, and they really do, like, they, you know, when you see the monorail moving about your city or the ferry moving about your city, that has extra value, but it's still not a lot of actual stuff going on. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.